Hello, and thank you for joining today's webinar. Most importantly, thank you for your service. My name is Tim McManus. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the Partnership for Public Service. For those of you not familiar with the partnership, we are a nonpartisan nonprofit working to build a better government and a stronger democracy. And one of the ways we do that is through convening conversations like this one to help support federal workforce. We know that many of you are here with questions about the actions that have taken impacting the federal workforce. Some of those include security and privacy concerns for federal employees and their families. We are here to help support you as best as we can through resource sharing, providing plain language explainers, and continuing to do what is a hallmark of the partnership, sharing stories of the incredible work that federal employees do for the country every day. Before we get into the content, I want to take a few moments here and go through a few housekeeping notes. And then we'll dig into the content. First, before we start things off, just a disclaimer. The content provided during this session is for informational purposes only and is not intended to provide any legal guidance. If you require legal advice, we recommend consulting with a qualified attorney who can assess your unique circumstances. So with that disclaimer, throughout the webinar, we will try to answer questions that you've submitted while registering. You can also submit questions anonymously through the Q&A function, and we'll get through some of those as well. We are not going to be able to answer every question tonight, but we will also have resources on this topic posted on our website. So we encourage you to check back frequently for updates on this webinar and many others. I'll also flag that we do have a full series of explainer sessions over the next few weeks to dig into a range of topics. On Wednesday, a couple of people from LinkedIn government will join us about maximizing your LinkedIn profile and using it to find a job. And we will be posting all of those explainer recordings on a resource hub for federal employees to share and watch later. Finally, while this discussion is geared toward federal employees, it's open forum, and we may have folks joining from other communities, including the media and external organizations. Before we go, I'd like to welcome our guests and thank them for joining us tonight to help answer your questions. I'd like each of you to go ahead and introduce yourself briefly to our audience before we get into the questions. Eva, can you start?
Sure. Hey there, my name is Eva Galperin. I'm the Director of Cybersecurity at the Electronic Frontier Foundation.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Maju Varghese. I'm a co-founder of the Democracy Security Project. Thank you for taking the time to be with us tonight. And I just want to say at the outset, I did 2 stints in government as a political appointee, working alongside and with career civil servants. And I wouldn't have been able to do that job without their expertise, their guidance, their institutional knowledge. So I value this cohort of folks. I am sorry for what you're going through right now and happy to provide a resource if we can tonight and going forward.
Again, Eva and Maju, thank you so much for spending an hour with our participants here this afternoon. Thank you for the insights that you're going to provide on this topic, which again is one that is top of mind for a number of the folks in the federal government at large, and certainly for the folks who are joining us here tonight. Before I forget, I also want to point out that you may hear from one of my colleagues, Jackson, from our government affairs team throughout the webinar. He'll be joining us to help dig through questions that come through via the Q&A and also help yours truly stay on track as well. So Jackson, thank you in advance for helping us stay on track and calling the questions that come through the Q&A. Finally, we want all of our participants here today to be able to walk away with an understanding of ways in which you can protect your online privacy, protect yourself from doxing and online harassment, and access additional resources on this topic. Again, all of this will be provided through our resource hub as well. So without further ado, we're going to get to what you all actually came here for, was not to hear me talking, but actually hear insights and perspectives from our experts, Eva and Maju. I'm going to start out with some questions again that came in during the registration. And Eva, I'm going to turn to you first. This was something that we had talked about in one of our prep calls, which is really the need to define what doxing is and what online harassment and how they are different and how you recognize those. If you could actually start off, that would be terrific.
Sure. So the origins of the term doxing sort of comes from a sort of kind of a 80s, 90s online community term, which is short for dropping dox. This came in the context of an internet in which most people used to be anonymous or pseudonymous and usually did not post using their real names. And so it was considered to be a tremendous breach of privacy to either drop information, linking someone's online identity to their sort of real life identity. And it was considered to be particularly invasive and rude to drop someone's physical location, because this was sort of thought of both as a kind of power move, but also as a way of essentially inviting harassment. Harassment itself is sort of the next step. So doxing somebody is harassment. It is, done with the intention of having somebody go out and do something to this person. You are not just dropping dox for no good reason. But the next step is that then people contact you or say things about you or do things to you and your various accounts. And this has become more and more physically dangerous as the line between our digital identities and our, sort of everyday physical identities has really essentially disappeared. So back in the, I would say, mid to late 90s, we saw a rise in what was called swatting, which was also enabled by doxing. So somebody drops dox, says what your real name is, they figure out where you live, then somebody then goes and calls your local police force and tells them that you are doing something which would justify sending a SWAT team to your house. SWAT teams are famously trigger happy. And so this is extraordinarily dangerous to the people who are being targeted via swatting. But one of the things to keep in mind when we talk about both doxing and harassment today is that it is used in a really disingenuous way right now by people in power. And it's used as a way of criticizing attempts at accountability and transparency. So when we try to, or when journalists try to report on, say, who is working for Doge, the very first thing that Elon Musk does is complain that this is a violation of the terms of service of X, which says that you should not dox people. On the other hand, he is perfectly willing to point to specific federal employees with jobs that he thinks are ridiculous or unneeded, or that he thinks that they are doing poorly, often in a way that misrepresents who they are or what they do. And the merely bringing them up to his audience of millions of people is inviting harassment. This is doxing. And the reason why it is doxing is not because he is using real names or because he is using addresses, but because it is a powerful person using his enormous platform with the intention of causing pain and harassment to people with less power than he has. And that is the difference between, sort of a doxing attack and demanding accountability and transparency from your government, which is a thing that I think we can all agree is good. And one of the big problems that federal employees have right now is that frequently federal employees are public. It is known who you are or how much money you make, what your name is. Things like that are readily available. And one of the reasons that they're available is precisely so that we can have transparency and accountability in government. But when this information is being presented in the context of this person is bad, this person has done bad things in government, this person is superfluous, this person is a DEI hire, you should go and harass them, then that is doxing and harassment, and it is bad. So we're going to talk about how to stop it.
Great, thank you, Eva. Maju, anything to add to that before we move on?
No, I think Eva summarized it incredibly well. It is, you know, and to Eva's point, historically we have been very, you know, we weren't exposing all this information about ourselves before, and now we readily do it on social media and therefore there's a lot more out there about us that folks can weaponize. And so as we you know begin to talk about this, we need to talk about what are we revealing about ourselves in our everyday sort of online life, and how much of that should we be thinking about, you know, rethinking and being a little bit more discreet about.
Maju, great segue to the first set of really kind of the in-depth questions, which is as we look at our own selves, what are preemptive solutions for trying to again combat or stay away from potential doxing attempts? And Maju, I'm going to turn to you first. So just very quickly, what steps can federal employees take right now to prevent online privacy and to prevent their own online privacy and also keep themselves from being doxxed?
Sure. So first and foremost, I think it's like start looking at the categories of the things you can control. You know, if you, for example, the question we get a lot is, well, I purchased a house with my partner or my spouse, and those records are already out there. And there are some things about me that are already out there. But there's also the things that aren't public record searches. But like if you Google your name and phone number, your name and address, it is startling how fast all of that pops up. So what we recommend to people is, first of all, just get a sense of that. Google yourself. Google your address, Google your name and your address, see what comes up. Data brokers have been selling our information for a long time. And so People Finder and some of these other sites will have very detailed information, not only about where we live now, but where we have lived in the last few years, our family members' names, our birth dates, all sorts of things. So there are some things you can do today to kind of help mitigate against that. A lot of folks we work with, and our team has actually used some of the applications you can download off the App Store. Things like Delete Me and Canary are just a couple of examples of tools that can help scrub your online profile down a little bit. It's not a foolproof solution, but it is an opportunity for you to cull some of that back. It'll scrub your data off of some of those sites. Another thing you can do, and it doesn't happen overnight, but I did it. If you go on Google Maps and put your home address in, if it's especially if it's a single family home, there it is. It pops right up. You can blur your house online. You can click report a problem, click blur your house, and now like that doesn't pop up right away. Now again, someone's going to find your address. They're going to find your address, but why give them the keys to the kingdom and show them your front yard, the cars in the driveway, the whole 9 yards? Again, just be more discerning. And then it's like, then there's social media and the things that we share about ourselves. You know, that first day of school picture with our kid and at the front of the house holding up the first day of school sign. What's in that photo? Is our house number in that photo? Is your kid's school on that? The teacher? Just think about the things you're sharing. What settings are we using on those accounts? Are posts public or private? Have you culled over your friends list in a while and see who's following you and just make sure those are the people you want to actually let in? How much of our lives do we want to be sharing online in the first place? And also our personal email accounts and all of the things we use to communicate every day outside of our .gov life. Have you applied two-factor authentication to that? Are you using a password manager? You know, if you're not using a password manager and authentic passwords, and if you're reusing passwords that are easy to guess, all it takes is a really determined actor to hit on it once, and they suddenly start to hit on a bunch of your accounts and a bunch of the dominoes fall. So tighten up those things. Use a lot of the things we use do have tools built in them. We just don't use because they're inconvenient. Nobody wants to sit around changing passwords. No one wants to sit around doing two-factor. But if you spend a little time and do it once, you can start to put up some barriers between you and a bad actor. We kind of talk about it in like, it's a cold day, you put on layers of clothes. just put on layers, password managers, unique passwords, put the privacy settings up higher on your phone and on your social media accounts. Be discerning about what data you're sharing on the applications on your phone. Are you sharing your location on every one of them, or just when you're using them and only a select few? Do they have access to your camera and your microphone on your phone? All those things, like you can do an audit right now of your applications and what those applications have access to. And again, take a little bit of control back. There's a lot we can't control. There's a lot we can, and a lot of it's tied to our own behavior and some of our own, the things that we do. So those are some of the things we recommend that people are doing, like themselves, to stay a little safer and mitigate some of the risk.
Eva, earlier you talked about the difference between doxing and online harassment. Are there things that people can do right now preemptively around trying to avoid online harassment as well? And certainly if you've got some other suggested preemptive strikes to prevent doxing too, we'd love to hear from you.
Sure. I mean, Maju went over a lot of these things already. I think it is really important to keep three different things in mind. One is that these things are largely divided into two groups, locking down the security of your accounts, and then locking down the privacy of your data. So things like turning on two-factor authentication and making sure you're using a password manager and have strong and unique passwords for all of your accounts. That is all security for your accounts, so that when you get doxxed and somebody starts looking for you and looks for your accounts, they're not able to immediately break into your accounts. That is what that advice is for. The privacy advice, on the other hand, is again, starts with Googling yourself, just looking to see what information about yourself is available to the public. And the next step is to start locking those things down. So you can take your social media accounts private. You can close down your social media accounts for people who would like to do that. Additionally, you might want to think about the services that exist to take data about yourself down from data brokers. And again, Maju pointed out that these are not 100%. They're not going to take everything down all the time, and it is a endless battle, but Consumer Reports did a comparative analysis of the different data deletion services, and the two that came out on top were Optory and Easy Opt-outs. So those are the two that I usually recommend to people. If people are interested in signing up for Optory, you can message me after this, and I have a 20% discount code that we can use, because I understand you are either federal employees or recent federal employees. You don't have a lot of money to spend on this. The other thing to keep in mind is that it's not just your social media accounts that are potentially giving away information about yourself. Venmo, for example, for a very long time made all of your friends, the people to whom you make payments, publicly available by default. So that's something that you might want to take a look at. It is not enough to protect your photos or your posts. Metadata, who you're friends with, and who you are connected to can also give away a lot about you. For example, we are frequently on various social media platforms connected to our family, to our psychologist, to our dentist, to our pastor, and these give away a lot of information about us. And then those people can go on and become targets. So anytime that you can mitigate the people's ability to look at your network and make guesses about who you are and who you're hanging out with based on that, that is a very good idea. And then finally, you should have a plan for if you do become a target of doxing or harassment, which should include both locking down as much about yourself as possible, but also having a buddy, a person whose job it is to look at the messages that are being, targeted at your account, to look at all of the harassment and absorb it for you so that you don't have to read it yourself, because that is really traumatic, but also to let you know, or to let the local authorities know if there's something genuinely worrisome in there. Because honestly, you shouldn't have to waste your time on that. You should also alert your local authorities if you think that you are likely to be a target of swatting. Because if you have called them in advance, they are less likely to send police directly to your house, because they know that this sort of harassment campaign is already happening.
Thank you. We're going to come back to a little bit of the what if. What if I'm doxxed? What if I'm harassed? But I see that Jackson came on screen, and I think my orders are that when Jackson comes on the screen, he's going to actually ask some of the questions that are in the Q&A. So Jackson, I'm going to turn it to you.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, and appreciate everyone who has thrown a question in the chat so far. We're going to get to as many as we can. So the first one is on this topic. Both of you talked about a lot of steps that folks can take to protect themselves online. And Eva, you particularly talked about a few data brokerage services. I think generally, if folks are being targeted for paid services, when it comes to protect themselves online, what is worth it? What is not? I'm a current former Fed. Right now, we live in a time of economic uncertainty. What should folks be just doing because they can and it's free, and what is actually worth it if you have the funds or need to invest in those resources? And I'm happy for either of you to take that one on.
I mean, the good news is that a lot of these things are free. For example, if you are looking for a free password manager app, you can use Bitwarden. This will also manage your two-factor authentication issues. So, like, free services exist. But in terms of data deletion, the two that I recommend are Optory and easy opt-outs based on the Consumer Reports research. And specifically what this does is that if somebody actually has your name or an email address or a phone number that is associated with you, they then go to a data broker and they pull down all of the information that data brokers have about you. And what these services do is they write to the data brokers and they use the strong privacy laws that are available in certain states like California to demand that information be taken down. Data brokers don't always comply, and they are always getting, new information, and that is kind of what makes it a constant battle. But it makes things so much harder for people who are going to try to target you with doxing or harassment and try to use that small amount of information about you in order to make it a very large amount of information that they have about you.
Yeah, and I would just add, to Eva's point, security is personal. And, I think for some people, they are trying to get out ahead of this now. And so they're willing to make an investment. They're willing to pay for things. Some people are speaking out and are making themselves a little bit more public. And, my advice to people like that is to make this investment, right? But I would tell you, and I say this to friends and family who are not as similarly situated right now, I tell all of them that, like, just existing in the world has its risks right now. Being online has its risks right now. So if there are small things that we can do to protect ourselves in this moment, we should. The other thing I want to raise, and something that folks have been raising to us in the federal workforce, is people are worried about their data just generally. They're worried about their personnel records. They're worried about their social security numbers. So another thing I would say, and this isn't in the vein of doxing and swatting, but I do want to raise it, and that is monitoring your credit, right? Being conscious of that. Using the credit reporting agencies, freezing your credit if you want to take that step. Again, it's not solving all your issues, but it's a tool. It is available to you. It's something you can control, and it might be worth signing up for that. Again, in just existing in the world, there's a lot of financial theft and financial crime online. but especially if you're worried that your data, your PII is leaked out, not a bad thing to do as well.
Great, thank you both. And again, we've posted a couple of links in the chat for you as well, based on some of those resources. So I want to go back to Eva, what you started to talk about earlier, or what you began to mention, which is what if, right? What if we're doxxed? What can federal employees do if in fact they're doxxed? What actions should they be thinking about taking immediately? And then what are kind of some secondary things that may be at play as well? Maju, if we could start with you, Eva, pick up wherever he's leaving off, and also if we can talk a little bit about in this conversation too, like Eva, you talked a little bit about the reporting aspect of this too. What does that look like? Who do they report to? What is it that they're reporting? If the two of you can engage in a conversation around that.
Sure. Well, so first and foremost, if you are being doxxed, and as Eva said, if your information is now being weaponized, you're starting to see your home address and other very key personal details about you be weaponized, photos and all kinds of things being aggregated, right, to try to cause you harm. The first thing you want to do is ask yourself if you need to physically remove yourself from where you are. A lot of folks will recommend, you know, do I go over to the neighbors? Do I go over to a family member? Do I go to a friend? Think about that, you know, first and foremost. And again, if you feel like it's escalating to a point where you're physically in danger, remove yourself and be safe. First and foremost, or your physical safety is number one. Second is to start to document it. Start documenting the platforms on which you're seeing it, right? Doxing is technically against the terms of every platform, but first and foremost, you need to start to paint the picture and tell the story. Whether you, and I know Eva's going to talk about reporting, but you can't report what you don't document. So Tim, you talked about a buddy, right? And Eva did as well. Maybe it's not you. Maybe someone is helping you piece this all together and taking screenshots and other things, documenting where your address, where your photos being published, websites that it's on. And that way you're able to sort of tell the story on the back end after you remove yourself, after you're safe. Lock down those accounts. Lock down your social media accounts, and maybe even deactivate them if you need to. Lock down your personal email accounts. Be discerning about what you're responding to. If you're starting to get phishing emails and phishing texts asking you to provide even more personal information, chances are those are not real. Most of the entities aren't going to ask for very personal information for you to respond in a text or an email or click a link. So be very discerning about that. Lock down those accounts. Be very careful about any further incoming. Don't engage online if you have trolls that are publishing these things. Like, don't give, it's like a fire, right? You don't give it oxygen. Sort of step back, let someone else be your eyes and ears and document it for you and let you know what's happening to you, so you're not subjecting yourself to it. But don't ignore it either. Understand what's happening so that you can, you know, report it if need be. But first and foremost is to remove yourself and get yourself to a place where you feel safe before, you know, doing anything else. I'll kick it to Eva from here.
Sure. So step one, again, get yourself out of physical danger. Before you do anything else, you have to get yourself somewhere safe. And after that, you can start worrying about documenting threats or documenting groups of people who are gathering your information with an intention to do you harm at a later date. As I said before, I recommend that someone else do this for you. It is really mentally taxing, and I have seen a lot of survivors of doxing and harassment try to take this on themselves while also trying to get themselves to safety and trying to get their families to safety. And let me tell you, it's just a lot of very unnecessary pain. What your buddies should be looking out for are people who are posting information that is not readily available about you to places where people are also sort of aggregating it in order to try to build a more full picture of who you are for future harassment. Often this sort of planning happens on Discord servers. You can also go looking on like Reddit, where if you start looking through Reddit threads, you can start to find discussions about yourself and the doxing and harassment. And that's usually a good place to start looking. The thing that your buddy should be looking for are information leaks and concrete physical threats. Because if there are concrete physical threats in which you have an imminent expectation of harm, those need to go to the police, and they need to go to the police right away. There is a very good chance that the police will not take you very seriously, because that's just the law enforcement environment that we live in. But the more documentation you have and the more imminent and serious the threats are, the more important it is that that you bring law enforcement into it and make them aware of what's going on. Because I promise that if you are getting these kinds of threats and harassment and then something happens to you, that afterwards, if you have not gotten in touch with law enforcement, the very first thing they're going to do is throw their hands up in the air and say, how could we have possibly known? There was nothing we could do. There's nothing we're going to do to follow up for some reason. So I would be really careful about that. And also I would warn people to be realistic about their expectations about what law enforcement can and cannot do. They are not magic. In fact, they're barely helpful. But keeping them in the loop is important for when things go very, very seriously wrong. Also, I recommend talking to your friends and family about their sort of social media exposure, about their accounts and the things that they say online and the things that they have said about you or about themselves. Because one of the very first things that doxers and harassers are going to look for, if they cannot find dirt on you, is they will go find your friends and family. They will go find your friends and your family and your associates, and they will say what they will see what they are saying about you, but also embarrassing or possibly incriminating things that they are saying about themselves. And that's something that you might want to talk to your friends and family about. If you think that you are likely to be a target soon, they should also think about locking down both their privacy settings, to be more careful about what is exposed to the public, and also all of our advice about locking down accounts.
Thank you both. And again, if you take away nothing else from that part of the conversation, take care of yourself first before you worry about anything else. Jackson, you just came back on screen again, so we're going to throw it to you for an online question.
Yeah, so I'm going to wrap a few questions that we've gotten into one. And I think the general theme that I'm seeing here is we live in an online world. We communicate with each other online, and so I'm a member of Gen Z. The way I communicate with my friends is through texting, through Instagram chats, that sort of thing. And how, in the way that we are sort of taking ourselves offline for protection in this space, what are ways we can continue to communicate with our communities? For some folks, I know it's important for them to be vocal online in support of causes that they care about. So I've seen a few questions. I just want to roll into one here. What apps are safe to use? Or should we be communicating via WhatsApp or Signal, for example? And then also, in terms of continuing to have a presence online in social media, is having a fake name account or a different way to sort of, are there other ways that people can still use these services while maybe sort of making themselves less visible online so that they can still participate in the communication process that we have in the modern world?
I can start with communicating. Some people already do this, but you can use an app like Signal, which is encrypted to communicate. It also has the disappearing messages that you should set. So you can set it to disappear in a day, a week, a month. We highly recommend that. Because look, just to name, like, I understand right now, what everybody needs more than anything, in my opinion, is community, right? Especially all of you who are going through what you're going through right now. You want to stay in touch with your former colleagues. You want to stay in touch with, the latest on what all these executive orders and court decisions mean for you and mean for your status, and you're trying to share information. So we need to find ways to do that. We can't shut ourselves out. Despite all the advice you're getting from us, we're not telling you to log off. We're trying to have you do it responsibly. So using encrypted messaging apps like Signal is a good idea, right? If you want, especially if you're trying to communicate about things that feel sensitive to you. We know a lot of people who are organizing and sharing things via Google and Gmail and Google Docs. There are permission settings and structures you can put on those docs about sharing them and who has access to them and for how long they have access to them. So just use those kinds of tools to communicate. If you're going to be on social media, you may want to be discerning about what you're sharing, and do you want to I don't know if you want to set up an account that's an alias, or if you want to set up an account that doesn't reveal so much about you, like Facebook has your occupation, where you work, where you live. Like, maybe you don't share all that before you step out and say things. What I keep telling people is, if you're going to be more public, if you are going to speak out, if you're going to attend rallies and protests, if you're going to publish op-eds, if you're going to be more visible, take the steps that we've talked about here before you do that, right? Posture yourself to be more public, because you are putting yourself out there. And that does come with some risks, the risks we've talked about. So just make sure you're doing that. And if you're going to communicate, use some of these encrypted apps like Signal to sort of make sure it's more discreet. Use some of the functionalities that are built into them so that those messages aren't there forever. Just use some of those tools. I'll kick to Eva if she has other suggestions.
I do very strongly recommend the power of group chats. Group chats are very soothing. They're a very good way to sort of maintain your sense of community in difficult times. But I do think it's really important to be clear on what disappearing messages does and does not do. So the purpose of disappearing messages is twofold. One is that when you have your conversation, if shortly thereafter the person that you're talking to decides they want to snitch you out and take a bunch of screenshots of your conversation and send it to a journalist or Elon Musk or post it to social media, ideally, by the time it has occurred to them to do this, the message is already gone. The other thing is, disappearing messages are meant to protect your physical device. So if somebody gets their hands on your physical device, on your phone or on your computer, they don't automatically have the contents of all of your chats. That all of your sensitive conversations aren't just sitting there waiting to be seen by this person. So keep that in mind when you have turned on disappearing messages. Disappearing messages are incredibly useful, but only if you understand exactly what they are for. It is very tricky to balance being publicly visible with being sort of secure and locked down. This is also an issue that I face myself. I am a privacy and security activist. I tell people how to lock all their stuff down, but I exist in public. It's not like there's some sort of mystery about who I am or where I work or where my office is. People know these things. I've been online for some time. I have the cold, dead eyes of a person who's been online since the 90s. And the more public you are, the more sort of public facing you are, the more important it is that your accounts need to be extra secure. Your data needs to be super locked down. The places where you get your support from your friends and from your family and from your coworkers need to be sort of behind a firewall and in private chat. And the less of a public person you are, the more free you are to do things like have social media accounts and post pictures of your cat.
Jackson, over to you again.
Thanks. Yeah, another question from the chat. So, we have a number of feds on the line. Some are current, many are now former feds. And first, and before doing this question, I want to plug that on Wednesday, we will be having another webinar with the LinkedIn for Government team, helping folks translate their federal service into an online resume or just a resume point blank that can assist them with finding jobs either in the private sector or state government. So to that question, though, we've seen some websites like I think a DEI watch list, websites that are trying to dox federal employees who worked on specific types of work. And a lot of those employees are also folks who are no longer feds because their position has been terminated. How can individuals who maybe have worked on an issue that has made them an online target, sort of push forward their excellent experience and good work that they did on those teams to market themselves as they look for further employment, either on LinkedIn online or in other places? But I think the question was specifically around LinkedIn and what might be about their work online.
Well, let me start here. We've talked to a lot of folks who are balancing two things at the same time. First, LinkedIn has been used against them, right? These watch lists that we've just referenced, a lot of the information I'm pretty sure that folks use to aggregate the information to set up those watch lists, which by the way included a photo, their name, their job title, where they've worked before, their political donation history, all sorts of things. Some of that information was culled from LinkedIn, right? So while LinkedIn is an awesome tool when it comes to the job hunt, which a lot of folks I know are in the midst of right now, and networking, it can also be used against you. So just to name the balancing act we're talking about here. We know some folks who have hibernated their LinkedIn accounts. That is, they've made it not publicly visible. They haven't deactivated entirely, but for a period of time now. Let me give you an example. They're about to step out, write an op-ed, do something in the world. They've decided for this moment, I am going to hibernate this account. I can undo that and be a little more public again, but for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to do that. There are tools like that embedded in LinkedIn, so you can do that. And then at the end of the day, I think when if you're actively looking for a job and you're using LinkedIn as a tool to do that, you may still want to look at your LinkedIn page and see like who has access to it, who's following you. Are you getting weird incoming messages? And there's a lot of spam in the messaging app and the messaging tools, but are people like reaching out and trying to cull information from you and asking you for things? And is that person truly who they say they are? When there's all these like fake headhunters and all that reach out, like do a little due diligence before responding. Find out who these people are. Are they legit? Are they serious? Like, who am I talking to in the midst of this job search? They're playing on your emotions, right? So they know there's a sense of urgency. They know you're looking for work. So they're starting to throw you things in there. So I would just be very discerning about who's following you, about the people you're responding to, about even what you're sharing in from your prior positions. If just be very careful about that. And if you are in a moment where you're feeling like you might be being doxxed or there's some hot incoming, you may want to think about hibernating or temporarily sort of putting that account down to sleep for a little bit before you sort of turn it back on again. Again, Eva, I'll kick it over to you.
I think Maju had the best advice having to do with LinkedIn, because many of the people who are in this webinar right now are looking for jobs. But your best source of future work is most likely to be your community. And so I very strongly recommend starting, mailing lists and group chats with your sort of current and former work connections. because you may know someone who was applying for a job that's not quite right for them, but that might be better for you, and vice versa. This is the time at which it is incredibly important for us to help one another. And if we don't feel comfortable using a sort of public-facing tool like LinkedIn, then the next best thing is that we really need to pull together our community and make a concerted effort to help one another in the job search.
So that's going to be the last question that we take before we actually turn it over to each of our panelists for a brief parting thought on this issue. Haley is going to actually do a quick poll that will be really instrumental for us as we look at future sessions. So you should see a poll, and the first question is about how effective you feel the seminar has been. The second is about how much you agree that you will take this information from the webinar and apply it moving forward. And the third is asking for your input on future topics. So again, Haley, if you can post that if you haven't already. I believe it is posted. And Jackson or Haley, if you can give me the sign when that is complete. Okay, I got the thumbs up from Jackson that folks have completed the poll. Thank you again. That's instrumental in us figuring out other Explainer Series webinars as we go forward. What I would like to do at this point is turn to each of our panelists and just for brief parting thoughts on the issue and practical advice or whatever for our federal employees and others who are viewing this webinar. Eva, let's start with you.
Well, I'm going to start by dropping my a single link, my labor of love, surveillance self-defense. EFF has a digital privacy and security guide that we have been keeping up to date for about a decade and a half. It's translated into 8 different languages. It is called Surveillance Self-Defense, and you can get to it at ssd.eff.org. This includes a whole bunch of information about locking down your account, about password managers, about setting up 2FA properly, about thinking about your privacy. I also recommend the sections on threat modeling, which talk about managing your risks, which will, I think, give you a way of thinking about what is exposed about yourself versus what kind of risks you are taking versus how much trouble you're willing to go through in order to lock everything down. Because one of my great fears when information security people and privacy activists talk to ordinary people with like normal person problems is that we scare their pants off. We show up and we make everything sound very bad and very complicated. And then people either get so scared that they become sort of inert and they do nothing. They decide the government has everything all the time anyway. Why should I bother doing anything? That is absolutely not true. If your enemies already knew everything about you right away, so why should you bother taking anything down? They would be doing things already. This is a story that the powerful tell the powerless in order to get them to stop fighting back. There are absolutely things that you can do, and the fact that they may not be 100% effective does not mean that they can't be 70% effective, or 80% effective, or 90% effective, and all of that counts.
Thank you again for joining us. Thank you for your parting thoughts as well. Maju.
Thanks, Tim. I just want to also share our website, which is democracysecurityproject.org. And then we have an inbox, help@democracysecurityproject.org as well. If you have questions or have specific, needs, someone can reach out and either give you some tips and tools or vector you to one of our security partners who might be able to help you with a deeper need. To Eva's point, again, I'm going to start with where I was. I'm going to end with where I started, which is try to control what you can control. You can't control for all the universe's challenges right now, but you can control some things. You can take control of some of your data and your privacy. Like 70% is better than none, right? Just don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. You don't have to overcomplicate it. You can just kind of take some of that back. So that's like the technical advice. Let me also say this in this moment. I want to thank you all for your service. I want to thank you all, whether you're a current federal worker or recently left, not on your own terms, obviously. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the work you have done, for the impact you have made, for the impact you are continuing to make. My hope is in the future that you can make again. Real people are impacted by your service and the work you have done. You do deserve better. We all know that. But in this moment, my best advice is, as Eva said, find community in each other, lean on one another, leverage. This is a wildly talented group of people who have solved incredibly hard challenges and problems for us as a country. What I would ask of you all is to use your talents to try to solve some challenges for yourselves and for each other right now. Look out for each other, and try to stand by each other during this really difficult moment. And just know that there's a lot of us out here who are pulling for you, who want the best for you, and who are grateful for what you have done and what you continue to do.
Maju, thank you so much. And again, Maju and Eva, thank you both for sharing your insights and your perspectives here today. Great advice, great resources that you provided all of us to take a look at and both protect ourselves and also to respond to if needed. You'll see in the chat some of our upcoming webinars in this series. We encourage you to stay updated by signing up for our newsletter as well. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. Everybody is extremely busy. We appreciate you taking your evening to share it with us tonight. Please also keep questions coming and also topics coming that are of interest to you as we continue to build out our Explainer series webinars. Don't forget the Partnerships Resource Hub for Federal Employees, where we have more FAQs, blogs, links to other resources, including the videos from our full set of Explainer series webinars to date. You can find those at www.ourpublicservice.org. And I just want to echo what Maju said earlier, which is for all those federal employees, current or former, thank you for all that you have done. Thank you for all that you are doing day in and day out, or have done day in and day out to serve our country. Thank you all, and I hope you all have a good evening. Thanks.